And, why he stole my cologne, I don't know, but he took my desk cologne.
Because he must stink standing out there in the sun
Uh,
collecting money all day.
Yes.
Welcome everybody, Shavua Tov. We're in the bottom of Lamed Chesam and Beis, and about 6 lines from the bottom. So we're going into halachas about the onus and the fata, and we have that it has to be Nara, Basula, Shalom, Rosa, and we had this Gemara mentioned once before, and here it comes in. This could be today's sugi, the beginning of today's sugi. Amar Abaye, Ba'alo Mesa Pater, Shenema v'Nasan Lavi Anara, Ba'lo Lavi Mesa. If he was a man was ma'anis a girl, and before they had a chance to pay, the girl died. So does the halacha still apply that he has to pay the father? The payment of an asan lavi anaro chamishim kesef. So it says to give to the father of the girl. So the father's still alive, but since the girl died, so it says there's no chiyuv. Shenema an asan lavi anaro, that payment is to give it to the father of the girl. But if she's not alive anymore, it's not called lavi anaro, but lavi meisa. And that's how we pass like a Abaya, and that's the end of the Gemara. But the Gemara is going to be elaborate to say that Rava didn't hold that. Even though that's Abaye paskin, that's Abaye says that's the way paskin, that if the girl's not alive, so there's no din at all, the whole din goes off. So Rava didn't agree. Milta the pshita leil Abaye, Rava. Even though Abaye said took this for a fact, and he said it Russia, but Rava had a question about it. We're going to see there are two versions of Rava. The first version is here, and then the second version is going to be on the middle of the next page. That's going to be towards the middle of the page. Mabra Avashi Boy Lahachi Misa Osavagos Aino Savagos. We'll see about that. The first lesson of Rava is not going to be a question. It's going to be he definitely does not hold of it. I mean, the words of Gemara here are really Rashi says is referring to the second version in Rava. The Rava will have a question, but according to the first version, not the Rava has a question. He definitely argues, and he holds that he does have to pay the knas for the father. The boy Rava yesh bega bekeva ain bega bekeva. Can a girl become a bogeres in the grave? Means Rava understood that even after she died, there still is the chiyuv of paying the knas, not like Abaye. But he did have a question: if she would have been alive, she would have become a bogeres. Let's say 12, we said 12, half a year, 6 months. She became a nara. Then 6 months later, she becomes a bogeres. But she died. She died between 12 and 12 and a half. Does she become a bogeres in the grave? Means that you keep the clock going. That even after she dies, you'll count the 12 months, the 6 months from when she became a nara, and then do you say that she's a bogeres even in the grave? Which means the Gemara is going to say soon that if she's alive and she became a bogeres, so then the payment goes to herself. Again, when Asan Lavi Nara, who gets the payment? The father. That's only if she's a nara. If she's a bogeres, then that's when the raping happened. So then there's no din at all of knas if she's a bogeres. But if she was a nara, but then before the payment she became a bogeres, then she's eligible to the payment. The payment goes to her herself.
So here, in the grave,
that's the question now. No, if it's the first I prefaced that if it was not in the grave, if she was alive, then surely the halach is that she gets the knas. Right. And Rabbi wants to know, does she become a bogeres in the grave? That means she died between 12 and 12 and a half. Do we keep the clock going? And if the payment didn't happen until after she's a bogeres, is there a payment? Means, but to Rabbi was simple against Abaye. Rabbi held that if she didn't become a bogeres, if she would have died and the payment would have been still before the 6 months is over, then surely he would have to pay. He didn't hold up like Abaye. So even though the Gemara says that what Abaye says as a given, Rav has a question. According to this version, not Rav has a question. Rav argues, and Rav argues and says no, that if she's a nara, there's no that the payment goes off because she died. But there is a question. Rav said I do have a question. If she became a bogeres in the grave, if she becomes a bogeres in the grave, so she gets the money, but she's dead, so it goes to her yorshim. Who's her yorshim? If she has a son. Otherwise, if she has no son, so then it's going to go to the father anyway because he's the first yoresh. But if she has a son, so then it'll go to the son. If you say yesh bega bekever, if you say that she became a bogeres in the grave, so then she gets it, and then it goes to her son. If you say that the clock stops, she doesn't become a bogeres because she's still a nara, and the father gets it, and then that's his question. Yes, please.
How could she have a son?
Oh, that's the next Gemara. How could she have a son? She's died. She's a nara, and she died before 12 and a half. How does she have a son? That's the Gemara's going to ask this question. It's going to take about 20 lines, and the Gemara's going to say, right, she can't have a son. Case is wrong. It can't be.
So it means in any case it would go to the father.
So the Gemara is going to say that the two choices. The Gemara is going to edit what I just said. It says yesh bega bekever, and nobody doesn't have to pay. He doesn't have to pay. And it's not that she's a bogeres and it goes off. That's what the Gemara is going to say in about 20 lines. But first the Gemara understood that yesh bega bekever goes to the yorshim. Now the Gemara is going to say the yorshim top of the page Lamed Ches Umi Ma'abra
Yeah,
is
but she could have adopted him.
no, that's not a yoresh. That's not a
Oh,
yoresh.
that's what, you know?
Yeah, adoption is not a yoresh. She doesn't inherit. The only way she could have a child is if she became pregnant. Could she become pregnant if she died before 12 and a half? But telling about baby, the morning going to take a long brisa. We have this in Yivamis to talk about if it's possible for a young, at what age is it possible to become pregnant and give birth. But telling about baby, Kamed of Nachman, or baby said over a brisa. There are 3 women that are supposed to have relations with a contraceptive. The moch is a physical contraceptive that is a rag that she puts into the vagina in order that she shouldn't become pregnant, shouldn't conceive. Then it's dangerous for them to become pregnant. We'll see what a katana means. There's an age that she become pregnant, but it's dangerous to become pregnant. Mubaris if she's pregnant.
What's umanika? That
She's nursing. Mubaris if she's pregnant. Manika is that she's nursing. All 3 women, they shouldn't become pregnant. Why? This is what we're looking for. That it says that Tana she might become pregnant and die. Which the Gemara takes it to mean that there's no way. If she becomes pregnant, she's going to die. She might not become pregnant, but if she becomes pregnant, then she can't live. She's going to die, and she wouldn't give birth. Why should a pregnant woman make sure she doesn't become pregnant again? Because the Gemara says it's possible to be superimposed. She could be pregnant and become pregnant with a second blood, and one fetus might deform the other fetus. So we don't want her to become pregnant if she's pregnant already. It's not usual. Usually a woman doesn't become pregnant, but it is possible. I think even doctors say it is possible. It's a slight possibility, but it's dangerous. Sandal, Shemata Subra Sandal, that her Uber might become a sandal. A sandal means a deformed fetus. The reason why it's called the sandal, Rashi brings down, there's really a fish. It's like a soulfish. That a soulfish, when it first, it's a flatfish, and then it turns its head. That the head becomes twisted, and that's called. That's what the one means to say, that the uber will become twisted. So something will be deformed about it. And Manika, why should a nursing woman not become pregnant?
We don't hold from that. I mean, pregnant women have relationship with.
Right. The Gemara is going to say soon that the Chachamim argue. This is all job. The Chachamim say you could have relations, and Hashem should help that nothing should happen there, because it's not definitely going to happen, and it's too hard to be careful the whole time of her ibor, and it could be a couple of years that she's going to be pregnant and then nursing. Manika Hashem a nursing. She should not become pregnant because of the pregnancy, she might stop nursing, and the child is already born. Is not going to be able to have enough food, not enough nutrition. Okay, that's the point. That we think she might wean her child. Wean, like it says by Yitzchak.
So that's what
we don't want her to wean her child because she needs food. She has a child already. She's already nursing, and now she's going to become pregnant, and the pregnancy is going to stop her milking.
That's what some women do now.
What do?
They stop nursing so they can get pregnant.
And they have maternal, but they didn't have maternal.
I see. Okay, so the baby doesn't die. Here we're saying because the baby could die.
Right, lack of milk.
Food.
But what we're interested is what is this? What is the age that is dangerous for a woman to become pregnant? That's dangerous to get pregnant. Between the age of 11 and 12. That's the dangerous stage. That's the stage that is dangerous. She might become pregnant, and then if she does, she'll die. But less than 11, she can't become pregnant. More than 12, she can become pregnant and have a successful pregnancy. The Chachamim say we don't have to be choshesh, even though the facts are true, that if she becomes pregnant, it's dangerous. That all these women, they're allowed to be mishamish regular without having any contraceptive, and they should have Hashem should have rachamim. Hashem guards the fools, and we're fools in this aspect. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, and it's very hard to be careful. So you're allowed to rely on Hashem.
Is that part of the brisa?
Yes. So what do you see from all this? That it's dangerous for a girl to become pregnant if she's not 12, and if she does, she's going to die. Agmar says that if she becomes pregnant, she's going to die. There is a Gemara in Yevamos we had that she might become pregnant, and if she does, she might die. But Agmar takes it to mean if she becomes pregnant, she's going to die.
But we say the word here Shema also.
Right, but he said there's a Shema Tisabah, she might become pregnant, but if she becomes pregnant, she's going to die. The other Gemara says Shema Tisabah, Shema Tammuz. But here the Gemara takes it, there's no way she could give birth. So that's our Gemara over here.
So are we going like Rebbe Meir?
So the Rabbanan also agree that she shouldn't be, that if she becomes pregnant, she's going to die. But you can realize she's not going to become pregnant. But back to the fact, is it possible for a Ketana to become pregnant and have a successful pregnancy, to have a son at the age less than 12 and a half, to have a son? It can't happen. Now you might say that she became pregnant after she's 12. No, but then she would not have, if she died before 12 and a half, she didn't have even 6 months to give birth. If the conception and the birth happened during her narus at 6 months, could she give birth in 6 months? The whole stage of narus is only 6 months. The whole difference is only 6 months. And it means exactly 6 months, not more. You might say maybe it's not less than 6 months, but it could be more than 6 months. And Bagus means when she brings more maturity, breast formation, things like that. No, it's not true. Ella kamar. It says the word Ella. Ella is like in quotations. It says the word Ella. Ella shishachadashim, and that means only, not more, not less. So it's impossible that she would have.
Which Ella do we say?
Ella shishachadashim. Anybody knows the Bible says Ella shishachadashim. If you're going to say not more, but it could be not less, but it could be more. It says Ella. Ella kamar. That word Ella is the word.
Ella kamar.
It says Ella. He said the word Ella.
Ella shisha.
Right. Right. So what's our kasha? That if she gave birth before 12 and a half, conceived before 12, and here it says that before 12 is there, if she conceives, she's going to die. So we don't have a pshat. How could you say that she has a yoresh, she has an inheritor before the age of 12 and a half? She couldn't have been. So this is what Levi's Yaakov's kasha was, and therefore the Gemara amends. Edits what it wanted to say. It still remains yesh beggar b'kever or not, but it's always is yesh beggar b'kever. Not that the son is going to yashin, but paka av, the father's rights. What the word explode. They leaves. There's no terminate. That there's no schus because she's not an ara anymore. Or maybe you say that the clock stops, that she's an ara, and even though in the grave. If the clock would have been continued, she would have become a Bulgaris, but we stop the clock as soon as she dies, and she's an hour, and therefore the father's allowed to collect, even though if she would have been alive and she would have become a Bulgaris, so then he doesn't get it, she gets it. But once she died, so then the clock stops, and he's allowed to collect it, even if he didn't go to Bezdin until after, it's 6 months after she became an hour, but she's dead already, and the clock stopped, and maybe he is. So Rav is taking it for granted against Abaya. Abaya said that once she dies, even if she's an hour, if she dies, no schus, there's no chiyuv. But Rav argues. Rashi says that Rashi, not that he's saying it on his own, but he says he has different version of Rava. This is what Rava said. Misa osa bagrus or ein osa bagrus. Teku. That the way that he questioned it was not yesh beggar b'kever or not. Not that the clock continues or not, but when she dies, does that all of a sudden suddenly make her the same level as if she would have been a Bulgaris, which means that it stops. Oh, ein osa bagrus. And so here he doesn't have this is the question. This is not much the question. According to the first lesson, if she didn't become a Bulgaris, if it isn't 6 months since her naris, then surely the father does get it. That's why he definitely argues on Abaye. According to this is a Gufa's question. Abaye's din is his question. Do you say that when she dies, there's no mochiv anymore? Abaye said there's no mochiv anymore because he questioned it a little different, but he also says that maybe Misa makes her into a Bulgaris. The same way that a Bulgaris, the father loses his rights, so too, if she dies, also he loses his rights. If she's alive, so then Bulgaris will get it. If she's not alive, no one's going to get it. But according to this was the question of Rava. According to Mabra Abashi's version in Rava, that was his question. Means that which Abaye took for granted, Rava had a question. In the second version, in the first version, Imam argued. He didn't have a question. He said for sure not. He had a different question. If he is beggar b'kever or not. That's the end of the sugya, and it seems that we pass on like Abaye. That's why it says over here on that right away in the beginning it says. Even if she's still a nara, that it doesn't. There's no chus to get the knas anymore.
Because beggar b'kever, it doesn't make sense.
Why should the clock continue?
Exactly, because then if it continues here, then I'm sure there's a lot of other cases.
Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't have any. Maybe it doesn't have any other ramifications if she's alive or dead. But if she's dead. Yeah. But here the Gemara has other gear said that Misa Osa Bagrus does it take off the chiyuv to pay. Misa Osa Bagrus. But we pass on like Abaye that it does. It is also bagrus. It means as soon as she dies, there's no chiyuv to pay anymore. If he didn't collect, if the father didn't collect before she dies, so then there's no chiyuv. Nu sugya. Boy minei Rava me Abaye. Rava asked Abaye. Bo leben is arsamahu. He's chayiv. Onus mafati is chayiv, and he's chayiv to give money to the father. But she became rusa. She got married. Is that a reason why he shouldn't? Why the rapist shouldn't have to pay? She got erison. She married.
She married somebody else.
She married somebody else. Erison, yeah, right now marriage. I don't have the word betrothed. She became betrothed. Betrothed. That's how you say it? Betrothed?
Betrothed.
Betrothed. Okay. So Amalei Mik. So he said, what's the problem? What's this? Because why should the father not be eligible for it? Amalei Mik said, "Nasan Laviana Ra Shelo Rasa." The pasuk does talk about a Shelo or Rasa. That means when the rape happened, then she has to be not in the stage of Erison, or she shouldn't have been Abusa once upon a time. But by the payment, it doesn't say such a condition. Why it says V'nasan Laviana Ra, like we just said, that when he gives it to the father, it has to be the father of the Nara. If she died, it's called Laviana Nara. Because this condition, it says by the payment, but the din of Ashala Rasa doesn't say by the payment, it says by the actual onus of Mafata. Then it says it has to be Law Rasa. But it doesn't say the payment has to be, it doesn't say Nasan Laviana Ra Shalom Rasa.
That she can't be betrothed when the payment.
Right, there's no such din, it doesn't say that. So why shouldn't he have to pay? Why shouldn't he have to pay?
Right.
But the Gemara says, because I'm wondering, because there is such a din. It says if she got Nisuin, not only the betrothal, but also marriage over there says the money does go to herself. It doesn't just go to the father. Why is that? Does it say such a pasuk that he should give to the father of the girl who's not married? It doesn't say that. So how come whenever that's the din? The din is that it changes. It doesn't go to the father, it goes to the girl herself. So maybe by Eris and also it goes to the girl herself, or there's no payment. That was why he had reason to ask the question. But the Gemara says, no, it's not a comparison. Not Yasha. What's the comparison in these two cases? The Gemara is going to say, in a word, the Gemara is going to say that we know that by Nisuin, a woman goes out of the domain of her father. When she has marriage, not Eris, but she has Nisuin, she goes out of the domain of her father. So all of her money, all the money accounts, she goes into her own account now. She's her own person when she becomes a Nesua. But by Eris, you don't have that. So the reason why it goes to the girl herself is not because any din in the onus of her father. It's because all the money account goes to her. So whatever is supposed to the father, now that she's in a sewer, it goes to her. That's the reason why by in the sewer it goes latzma. Achiyasha, what's the comparison? Hasam hol bagus motziyim mishus av. Nisuin motziyim av. Ma bagus bole abogol atzma. Af nisuin bole avenisa latzma. There's the Allah when the girl becomes 12 and a half, she becomes independent from her father. And if she gets married, even if she's not a Bulgarian, she also becomes independent. Two ways a girl can become independent, either by becoming 12 and a half, or even once she's 12, when she gets married, also she's independent. So the same way by a Bulgaris, which is Pasha, we said more before it's Pasha, that if she becomes 12 and a half, the payment goes to her. The father doesn't get the payment, only if he collects before she's 12 and a half. Once she's 12 and a half, so then it goes to her. So just like Magrus, maturity, full maturity, takes her out of the domain of the father, and Knas will go to her. So too, Nisuin also takes her out of the domain of the father. Then it goes to her. That's the reason why Nisuin is different. Does Erison take her completely out of the Rishus of the father? But this is talking about a Dorim. When a woman makes a vow, so the father has the right to nullify. That's called Hafara. Hafara is the Dorim. And the husband has the right to. When she's in Arusa, so then she's not in her own domain yet. And the father and the husband will do a joint nullification. That's a dach in the door, not about money. But you see that she's not in her own, she's not independent yet. Just because she got Eris, it doesn't make her independent. Right. Both of them, her father and her husband, both of them in a joint partnership are gonna nullify her vow. Both of them have to nullify it. We'll see that in the door. But you do see that she's not independent yet. She's not out of the domain of the father. The father still has the dominion over her during her Erison period. So therefore, that's not a reason why the money account should be transferred into her account. She's not dependent on in her money business. So therefore, the Gemara says that even though Baal Evanis says the truth is it does go to her, the money goes to her instead of the father, but Baal Evanis still goes to the father. Okay, now we're getting more to the basic halacha of onus and mafata, and here is the Mishnah. Mafata. No, so there are two psukim we said in Parshas Mishpatim Mizbara Mafata, that he seduced the girl, and in Parshas Kisei he talks about onus, that he raped against her will. Mafata knows there are three payments that a mafata, that a seducer would have to pay, and there are four. It means one extra payment that an onus has to pay. What is that? The mafata has three payments. The mafata knows in boshes or pagam v'knas. Knas is the 50 kesef that it says in the pasuk, but there are two other things that doesn't say openly over there. But that's regular mazik, the boshes and the pagam. The boshes is the shame that he caused. That's evaluated how much money that is, how much that is translated into money. And pagam means how much he devalued her. And the Gemara will talk about, the Mishnah itself is going to talk about how
that she's not a virgin.
Right. The fact that she's not a virgin, how much it's worth less money on the market. We'll see what that means. And that's three payments. Knas is 50. What?
Yeah, a set amount.
Set amount, that's the 50 kesef that the pasuk says. And besides that, you also have to pay for the boshes and the pagam. But onus has one more payment. Also for the onus and also that's tzar. If he raped her, so then there's also pain involved, then he has to pay for the pain. If she was seduced, there was no pain. The Gemara is going to talk about which pain we're talking about. That's going to be the Gemara. The Gemara says now a list of things. That's one thing we just saw, that it's tsar. That's one of the differences between onus and mefateh. And now there's a Mishnah continues and says that over again, plus another two differences. Ma ben onus and mefateh. What are all the differences? So one of them we had already. We're just going to review it again. Onus nosenes atzar v'mefateh ein nosenes atzar. There's no payment of pain if he seduced her, only if he raped her. The second one we just had a second ago. The second one is onus nosin miyad v'mefateh l'kishay yotzi. That the onus pays immediately, even though the law is going to be he has to marry her. The onus also has to marry her, but he has to pay anyway. It's not one or the other. He marries her and also he pays to the father also. But the mefateh l'kishay yotzi, the Gemara can explain that it means only if he chooses not to marry her. The mefateh has a choice not to marry her. The onus doesn't have a choice. The mefateh has a choice, and if he chooses to marry her, then he doesn't have to pay. But if he chooses not to marry her, then he has to pay. And the third,
he doesn't have a choice to marry her, or he doesn't have
he,
choice.
the onus,
The onus
the
doesn't have
mefateh has a
he
choice. The
must.
mefateh has a choice. He doesn't have to marry her. He doesn't have to marry her. If he,
Why would he want to marry her?
why would he want to?
That's a good deal. Okay.
I'm not following. He likes her, and she likes him, and everything. Though they shouldn't have done, he shouldn't have seduced her before marriage. But if he did, and everyone agrees, the father and him and her, everyone agrees, so they get married. So then he doesn't have to pay the 50. He doesn't have to pay the knas. The onus has to pay the 50, even if they do get married. But mefateh doesn't have to pay only if he chooses not to marry her.
He could divorce her also. She might see it.
So the Gemara is going to say that here. Well, see the Gemara here. It says when he divorces her, but the Gemara is going to say that it means when he doesn't marry her. If he chooses not to marry her, so then
It's
he
called
doesn't.
divorcing.
What?
It's called divorcing.
No.
It's called
We'll see the Gemara. Maybe I'm jumping. The words mean when he divorces her, the Gemara doesn't have problems with that. The next thing in the Mishnah, the third difference between onus and mefateh. Onus shows about tzitzo, but mefateh and motzi, which we just mentioned, that the mefateh has a choice not to marry, or it says yet he could
What's
divorce
that?
her. Shows about tzitzo. Rashi just says that a tzitza means a cup. Maybe it's some kind of disgusting cup. I don't know. But the point is to say that he drinks. How do you say in English? You sleep in the bed that you made, something like that. So here he drinks in the cup that he chose. That means that if he was honest a girl, he has to marry her, even if he doesn't like her. And even if there's all kinds of problems, we'll see right away, she's lame and blind, all kinds of problems, and he says, I don't want to marry her. So no, he has to marry her. It's like tough luck. And if he was
She
honest,
doesn't have a say in the matter either.
no, she does. She does.
She
If,
doesn't wanna
we're going to
marry
see in the
him.
Gemara, all these cases, if she doesn't want to marry, the father doesn't want to marry them to marry, don't. But if they all agree, does he have a choice in the matter? So by honest, he has no choice. He has to marry whatever he was honest, he has to marry. But the Mefata has the choice to divorce her if he wants to. And also he can say not to marry in the first place. Case it shows about Tzitz, what would that mean? That he drinks the cup, he drinks his cup. Afilu ichigeras, afilu isuma, afilu mukashchin, even if she's lame and blind or full of boils, he can't say I can't tolerate it. That's his problem. He shouldn't have raped her.
Yeah.
And then the Mishnah ends off that this is only didn't marry her both by onus and mafat is only if she's a girl who's mutter to marry. But if for some reason he's not allowed to marry her, so then it doesn't override that isser. Nimsa badvar ervo she'enu b'yilava b'Yisrael enu b'shayla kaimu she'nema below siyel isha isha b'yilava. The pasuk says he should marry her. She should be to him a wife only if it's a permissible wife. But if it's not a permissible wife, let's say she's somebody who's also to marry like Zera, something like that, or nimsa badvar ervo after they got married, so then she was muzana. So he's not allowed to marry. He's not allowed to stay married to a woman who was muzana after she's married. So then it doesn't. The mitzvah to stay married doesn't override any other kind of issue. But if they know issue, she's a kosher girl, and they're allowed to have a marriage, so then he has to stay married to her. He's not allowed to divorce her.
I'm sorry, how did it go? Nimbar here.
So that would mean that if there's the error after if it was found in her,
Oh,
that
if they found that there was an error.
but which would mean that it's and would always mean she's somebody's
then he doesn't. He's not forced.
and he's not allowed. He's not allowed. He's not permitted to keep her. He's not allowed to marry her. He's not allowed to keep her.
Not allowed to keep. Yeah, English. Okay.
So we said in the Mishnah that the onus pays tsar and mefata does not pay tsar. And the Gemara wants to know which tsar we're talking about. Which pain is there by a rape that is not by seduction? The first thing the Gemara takes as the initial choice would be that by onus, since he forced her, so he threw her down on the ground. By the seduction, he didn't have to use any force. She was agreeing. But by onus, if she wasn't agreeing, so he forced her and he threw her down. But if he didn't throw her on the ground, he threw her down on a bed, on silk, something that's cushioned, so there's no din to pay tsar. Then you might say so. Maybe the Mishnah only means if there was actual tsar on a hard floor. But Tanya B'Shimon Yudam and B'Shimon only say them B'Shalom Satzam B'Pnei. So far, you turn the page. There's a machlokas about this point. Our Mishnah says that it's a payment of tzar, and somebody argues on our Mishnah and says no, because the same tzar that we're talking about, eventually when she would have gotten married, would have been the same tzar. So we're not talking about throwing down on the floor. The husband doesn't throw his wife around. So that's not what the Gemara means. If it would have been that tzar, then it would never happen under her husband. So what are we talking about? A kind of a tzar that she would have eventually had by marriage. Of the rice that says that no, there's a difference. Even if she would have had this pain under her husband, but it's not the same if it was forced or not. When she's married, she's doing it with Ratzon. But anyway, what does it say? That there's some kind of a tzar that would have happened anyway. So it's not talking about being thrown down. The pain of the separation of the legs, which the pashpshat means the actual bia. Even though the words are very like lashon nakia, Taisa talks about it if it means the actual bia. I think there's simple words you could say that we're just using a lashon nakia, but it means that the first bia after when she's a basula, so it's painful. There's a pain and they're breaking the hymen. So that by an onus, he has to pay for that, and that he could talk about that. Somebody argued and said anyway she's going to eventually get married. It also would have happened. So that it's not a pain that she would have been able to avoid. She would have gotten married anyway. Eventually, the husband would have had this, caused her this pain. So she didn't lose out that pain. She didn't lose out because she was raped. She would have gotten that pain anyway. The Gemara continues, but the Gemara doesn't know that. The Gemara says that if so, if the pain we're talking about is the pain of the first bia, so then by seduction also, he should have to pay. If you say there's a difference between the onus is paying because he caused her that pain of the first bia, that he broke the hymen, and we don't say this for like Rav Shimon that said that he doesn't have to pay because eventually she would have been pained anyway. So Mafata also should have to pay. The Gemara says the Gemara is going to say that it's not so painful. The Gemara is going to say that when she does it willingly, like marriage or if she was seduced, so then it's not such a pain. Only when it was done against her will. So then the pain of breaking the hymen, that's a big pain. The Gemara is going to say a few examples. I don't know what the importance of all the examples is going to be. I'm skipping. I'm jumping. I'm sorry. I jumped a second. First, the Gemara says Futanami should have to pay.
Yeah.
So I jumped. So I'll go straight. Really, there is a pain, but if she was seduced, it's like somebody said to his fellow man, tear my silk garment and your putter. Means he waived it. So the mafuta, since she was seduced, so she says she's mochel. So there's no payment because she was mochel, which doesn't make sense because then there's no boshes and pegam either. Say the mafuta has to pay that. But the Gemara asks the question straight. Shali, is it called Shivan Shali? My garment. They have one in it. Here the case is that's the father's. Means the payment doesn't go to the girl. The payment goes to the father. So she can't be mochel the father's payment. So that's not a good teretz. If there is a pain, so it's the father's right to collect. And even though she was mochel, it's not the father's business. The father has a right to collect. So the Gemara is not happy about this answer. Doesn't answer the question yet. Now the Gemara says, this is what I want to say. Now the Gemara is going to say that it's not so painful. The piece of reglaim that the Gemara calls is not so painful if it's done willingly, only when it's forced. The women, the smart women, I don't know why it has to do with pikros. It means that if we ask the women, they're going to tell us that if she willingly has relations, it's not such a big pain. Even though it's the first time, even though it's the first one, she's a basula, she's a virgin, it isn't so painful. The Gemara says it is painful. There is some kind of pain. So the Gemara is going to give a few examples of something that's not so painful. And Abai says that his mother, it wasn't really his mother, it was his governess because his mother died in childbirth. But
his mother died in childbirth.
Always Abai when he says,
he means the one who brought him up.
Right. So like you put hot water on a bald head, the head of a bald man. I don't know what it means to say, but it means that there is some kind of sensation, but not that it's painful. Rav Amar Amali Bas Rav Chisda, he talked about his mother telling him, and Rav spoke about his wife, and Papa spoke about his wife. They asked him how painful it is. Amar Ali Bas Chisda, Rav married the daughter of Rav Chisda. So Kiruta de Kusilta, like a puncture, like an injection. It's painful, but it's not like the end of the world. Papa Amar Amali Bas Abu Subra, that was his father-in-law. The daughter of father-in-law, means he said his wife told him, Kinama Kusha Bechinchi, like hard bread on the gums. Also, like it's okay, it hurts a little bit, but it's not something that's so painful. So I know that the Gemara says that by Mefuta he does not pay, and onus does pay. So that, of course, if you throw it down on the ground, he has to pay for that also. But even if he didn't, so there's a payment that would be for the actual bia there's a payment of the tsar that's evaluated that there's no payment if it will be a mafuta. The Gemara, the Mishnah said that there's a difference between the onus and a mafata. The onus pays the 50 shkolim. They pay 50 shkolim. I don't like saying 50 shkolim because it sounds like our 50 shkolim. Our 50 shkolim was not that kind of 50 shkolim. It's much more the shkolim of once when the Torah talks about it. So I don't like saying the 50 pieces of silver. It sounds a little bit more. So the onus pays right away, even if he marries her, but mafata only if he divorces her. So the Gemara said,
a reference of, in today's money.
so I have to find out.
$1,500 or something?
So I don't know. The cheshbon would be how much. There's 2 points. One, the value of silver is very, very little to what it was once upon a time. He does go with the value of silver. How silver it was, so it's not something significant. But they talk about the buying power. You have to cheshbon in the Gemara how much a gram of silver could have bought in those days. Then make a cheshbon of how much buying power that is nowadays. I would like to look it up. It would give some more understanding of what's happening over here. The Gemara says, the Mishnah said that the mafata pays when he divorces. The kishayotzi, ishtohi. How's Rashi explaining the Gemara's kasha? V'chi ishtohi kvar tekama lekishayotzi. Oh, the way Rashi reads it, ishtohi. That's the way the Gemara reads it. That is it his wife. It doesn't make sense to say when he divorces because he didn't marry her yet. So the way to say it,
Is it his wife?
Is it his wife? That's how Rashi reads it. The Kishayosi, when he divorces her, Ishtohi, is she his wife? He didn't marry her. The Mishnah means to say if he doesn't take her. It means when he seduced her, so there's a choice if he should marry her. If he chooses not to marry her, then he has to pay. But if he chooses to marry her, he doesn't have to pay. In contrast to the onus, it has to pay even if though he has to marry her. We learned the brisa that says that, and that's going to be right away in the beginning of the brisa. That's what we're looking for. It doesn't say lekishayoti, it says lekishalo yichnos. That's enough for our purposes already. The brisa goes further, but the main point is to say that the mafata pays only if he doesn't marry. But the brisa continues. But boshus begam nosin miyad. But the boshus begam he does pay. The other 2 payments that he makes for the shame and the nezek, the devaluation that he caused, that he does pay even though he does marry her. But the mafata only pays the knas only if he does not marry her. Okay, so we got what we're looking for, that lekishayotzi means lekishalo yichnos. It doesn't mean when he divorces her, he didn't marry her. But it means if he decides not to marry her, then he has to pay. If he decides to marry her, he doesn't have to pay. The bush and the begam, he has to pay regardless. Once we're in the brisa, we continue the brisa, and it opens up a new subject, and that's going to be about the father. The pasuk that talks about that if he has a choice, we spoke about if he has a choice, but how about the father, the girl? Did they have a choice in the matter? So it says, as far as the father or the girl herself, that they don't want to marry, so then there's no difference. Onus and mafata, both of them, either she or the father have a right to stop the marriage. It means if the girl doesn't want to marry, she doesn't have to marry, and if the father doesn't want to marry, also they don't go through with it. And the Gemara wants to know psukim about all this thing. We said onus and mafata, both the girl and the father have the right to refuse the marriage. Bishlam and mafuta, I understand that there's a pasuk for each one, both for the father and for the girl. The pasuk says openly, that says openly that if the father refuses to give her to him, so then he should then the seducer has to pay. That says openly that the father has the right to refuse the marriage. But he asks me 9. He only says that the father has the right to refuse the marriage. Does she have a right? Does she ever say in the marriage she doesn't want to marry? It's extra pasuk. It says it says 2 words, a double term. That's to teach not only the father has the right to refuse, the girl also has the right. If she doesn't want to marry, she doesn't have to marry. That's a super positive factor. How about onus over there? How do you know that she has the right to refuse the marriage? What? She. Kisib, it says she should be married to him. That word tihiyeh midaita, that's mashma with her agreement. That the wording of velosi elisha implies that she agrees. So that's a good source to say that if she doesn't want to marry, she doesn't have to go through with it. And how do you know that the father has a right to stop this marriage? Someone was Ma'anis' daughter, and the daughter wants to marry him, but here it says the father has a right to stop it. How do you know? I'm Rabbi. So it doesn't say open pasuk here. We're going to have 2 drushes over here of the Amoron. There's Abai and Rava, first white line. That the sinner shouldn't gain. What's going to be the gain? That he was ma'anis, he raped somebody, and then he's going to marry her against the will of the father. That's called chote niska. We don't want to have that the sinner should gain by his sin. You do have to have her agreement. What does it mean? That usually by the Nara, the father would have the right to be able to stop the marriage, and now are we going to take it away from him? I'm not sure. Is that true that the father has the right to stop if the girl? I forgot the halacha. Berthlon kedushin. Does the father stop the marriage if his daughter Ara, she wants to get married? I thought she can get married if she's an Ara. Here it says that he'd be gaining if he'd be able to marry her.
The rapist.
The
just
rapist,
for onus.
right? If he'd be able to marry her with her consent alone, and the father can't stop it, that's called that he gained something. I'm not sure what he gained. I thought that he'd be able to a regular man that wants to marry her now, and he convinces her. Can the father stop it? I don't remember. Here it seems to say, I don't know what it's, I don't know. Rabbi has different reason to learn out that the father has a right to stop it. Which is worse? So surely onus is worse. The mafata, he went against the will of the father, but he didn't go against the will of the girl. She agreed. And over there we said that both that the father does have the right to stop the marriage. That was the pasuk before. That's an open pasuk. So onus, which is worse because he went against the will of the girl also. So he's a worse person. So surely the father would have as much rights as he had before by the mafata. If by the mafata he has the right to refuse, so then surely by an onus. So the Gemara says two svaras how to learn out that the father has the right to refuse the marriage if his daughter was raped. And now the Gemara explains why Ishmael doesn't hold an other drush. Everyone agrees to the law. The question only is being learned out from.
Excuse me, I thought that in the first, in terms of Abaye, I thought that he had to marry her.
He does have to, but
So what does it mean that the father doesn't want her?
Yeah. He asked if the father and the girl both want, so then he cannot say I don't want. That's true. That if the father and the daughter they want to marry, they want to
What
go
if the
through
father
marriage.
says I don't want?
No, I said then it's all.
Oh, I thought by the Torah he had to marry her.
That's what we're saying. That means he has no say in the matter. The rapist doesn't have a say. We don't ask him.
I see.
If we ask the father and the girl, you want to marry? You want him to marry your daughter? You want him to marry you? And they say yes. Then we tell the man you're
You
marrying
have
her,
to. I
and he
see,
says I
because
don't
they
want
said
to.
yes.
We say we didn't ask you.
I
You
see.
must marry her.
So if we say if the father had no say in it, then he's going to be gaining.
Right, and I'm not sure why, because he's going to be gaining because now he can marry without the father's consent. And a regular case, can he not marry with the father's consent? If he wouldn't have raped her, he can't just convince her to marry him. Here it sounds like he needs the father's consent. I didn't know that. I thought an hour she's on her own already, but I don't remember. I thought so. I thought that an hour could marry. The father also could marry her. Okay, I forgot. But here it seems to say that the father usually has a say in the matter, and here he's going to gain. He's going to be able to marry her with the girl's consent without the father's consent. Now, each one of us know that everyone agrees to the law that the father has the right to refuse, but the Gemara says why each one doesn't hold the other one's far. Third white line. That's not called that he's gaining because since he has to pay, he's paying the knas. That's not called the gain. The fact that he has to pay so much money, that's not called that he gained. If he would be able to get her without paying the money, that's called that he gained something. But the fact that he has to pay so much money, that's not called a chote niska. He doesn't hold it a kavachomer because mefated the iu matzi ma'akev avianami matzi ma'akev. Honest the ihu lo matzi ma'akev avianami lo matzi ma'akev. The word ihu means him. Before we had ihi, the last now line that ihi is a she, and ihu means him, masculine. So Abaye doesn't hold like Rabbi's kavachomer because he says, I'll tell you a svara why it should be more svara that the onus the father should not be able to refuse. Why the mafata that the seducer has the right to refuse, and then the father also has the right to refuse. But by the onus that the rapist does not have the right, maybe the father also does not have a right. Means as far as the Kal the Gemara said a rapist is worth than a mafata. That's true. But there's as far to say the opposite also, that maybe we give the father as much right as the seducer. That if the seducer has the right to refuse, the father also has the right to refuse. But by the rapist who doesn't have any right to refuse, maybe the father also would not. But this is all as far as why if we would hold the other one's far or not, but at the end everybody agrees that by and both are in agreement to the law that by the onus also the father has the right to refuse the marriage. So it comes out, just to sum it up, that both the girl and the father have the right to refuse the marriage both by seduction and also by rape. And the difference is by the mafata and the onus, the mafata has a right. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to, but he has to pay the 50 silver, and the onus has to pay the 50 silver plus marry. Tanya Idach, a new brisa, new point. Tanya that's who ain't love plum. That's the brisa. The brisa doesn't make sense of this word, this point, but the word's translation means even though the onus has to pay right away, he has to pay the 50 kesef, but when he divorces her, she has no money coming to her, which the words don't make sense because he can't divorce her. The words say if he divorces her, she doesn't get anything. Now that doesn't make sense because you divorces me matzi mapik lo. Can you divorce? You can't divorce her, so that doesn't make sense. But the Gemara is going to say it means when she wants to get divorced. It means he can't divorce her, but if she wants to get divorced, then they could.
In la love.
She has nothing on him. She doesn't have
She
anything
has
on
nothing
him.
on
I mean, she
him.
has no claim of money. When she gets divorced, she doesn't get any money. And the Gemara has to explain that it means if she wants to get divorced, if she wants to get divorced, she's not going to get any payment. Mace, and also if he dies, because usually a woman will get ksuba, yatsa kesef knasa big subasa. The money that she got for the knas means that the owner's paid. He got married, and he paid 50 kesef. That's the halacha. That even though he marries, he has to pay. And now he's divorcing her, or he died. Usually there's a ksuba. So the money that he had paid for the knas, that becomes the ksuba money. He says, I don't owe you ksuba. Even though usually by divorce, he has to pay ksuba. If he dies, he has to pay ksuba. But here, the money of the knas, as he said, your father got money already. I paid the ksuba already. I gave your father 50 kesef when I got married to you. And that's the ksuba money. But if Yesi Abu the Omer, Yesh ksuba money, she does get some kind of a ksuba. She gets 100, not 200, but she gets a ksuba of a money. And the Gemara is asking us all machlokes about the Mike Mifti. What is the machlokes if she gets a ksuba or not? The Rabbanan Sabri time might kin Rabbanan ksuba kadesh lo yidei kal ben avlosia. What's the reason why the Rabbanan usually made that the kind of ksuba in order that it should be hard to, it shouldn't be easy to divorce. We don't want to encourage the divorce, so he has to know if he divorces his wife, it's going to cost him money. That way, he'll think twice before he divorces. But over here, he can't divorce her, so there's no reason to give ksuba. The whole reason why I make ksuba is because it should be hard to divorce. But here he can't divorce if he wants to. So there's no reason to make ksuba. But the hala matzi mapach, he can't divorce her. So there's no reason to give ksuba. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Savar hanami mitzar la ada amrahi lo binalach. He has a way to get out to get the divorce. He makes her miserable till she wants the divorce. So we do have to make some precaution that to make it difficult for him to do that, and therefore we do make there is a ksuba. It's interesting because before it said that the reason it says is because the knas counts for the ksuba. Here the Gemara says as far as why there shouldn't be any ksuba at all because he can't divorce her anyway. But the Bryce itself did say the reason is because the knas money costs for the ksuba. But the Gemara Svara seems to be a little different. What was the machlokes that we have to protect them like any other marriage, that we don't want to make it easy to divorce. On one hand, he can't divorce. On the other hand, he can make her miserable till she wants to get divorced. So that was the machlokes. It continues. On the shows about Tzitza, we said that he has to marry her even if he doesn't like her. Since he raped, he has to divorce. He has to marry. The two dinim of Otis and Rafata, we had Xer Shava before, either Nara or Basula. There was some kind of Xer Shava. And over there we learned out that even if it doesn't say something by one of the two subjects, we learn out from each other. The one of them it says Chamishim Kesef, the other one it says Shkolim. So we make Xer Shava. So here, two, let us learn out one from the other. Learn out this thing also. And if you say by an onus that he doesn't have a choice, so say by Mafat also he has no choice. How do you know that the husband has a choice? That the father has a choice. It says, and we learned out that she also has to agree. But how do you know that he has a choice? How do you know that the Mafat has a choice not to marry her? The pasuk says that he should take her for a wife. It says that if he's Mafat, how does the pasuk go? That he should take her for a wife. Then it says if he doesn't want, if the father doesn't want it, then he has to give her the ksuba. The 50 kesef, but it does say that he's supposed to take her for a wife. In the way that it says taking a wife, it has the terminology that sounds a little bit like it's only if he wants to.
How much is the whole thing? The pasuk in the green? Or what?
No, only the first four words.
Isha.
That's the pasuk. And the Rashi is the word lo implies midaito, only if he wants to take her. The pasuk it says if a man seduces a woman, a basula, a virgin that's not married, and he lies with her, so he should. It's not clear what the words mean. It doesn't mean money over here. It means he should marry her. But the fact that it says something about lo, that sounds like he's doing it out of his own free will. He wants to. So this is the pasuk we learn out that if he doesn't want to marry, he doesn't have to.
Okay.
So the Mishnah said that even if she's a lame or she's blind, also he has to marry her. I asked the following question. We know in general there's a klal, if there comes a conflict, a clash between a positive commandment and a negative commandment, so the positive commandment wins out. How do we have about climbing tzitzis? Let's say that was the case that shatnez, you have to wear tchelas and you bring a big pishtan, so it comes together simultaneously. The mitzvah say overrides. Here too, it came a clash that he raped a mamzeres, let's say, and there's an issur to marry a mamzeres, but not as a mitzvah to say below see Elisha. Why don't we say that the positive commandment overrides the negative commandment and that he should marry her? Amali, and he answered me, it's only when it's impossible to fulfill the both of them. Like what's the case here? Mila b'tzaras. There's a mitzvah to do mila, and there's a issur to cut off a tzaras. And if there's a tzaras on the foreskin, so there's no way. How are you going to do? You have to do mila. There's no way to get out of the mitzvah to say. So therefore, it overrides the lo saseh. The lo efshel lakim laseh. Aval hacha yamar the lo bina mi isel laseh klal. We see that it's not a definite mitzvah to say that you have to do. It's only, you see, it's given to the choice. If she doesn't want to marry, if the father doesn't want to marry, there's no mitzvah be'etzem. It's only if she wants. And everybody wants. But if you see that is a way to get out of it, so let get out of it. The way Rashi says over here, we tell the woman she shouldn't want. Hashanami milam saloma. Any roads. We tell the girl to say you don't want. It's possible to avoid it. So she says she doesn't want the onus, right? It's possible. It means if Rashi seems to say that you have to tell her, she has to say I don't want. And maybe Rashi doesn't mean that. Maybe Rashi means that since you see that it's not an absolute mitzvah, it's only dependent if the people want. So since it's not absolute, so then it doesn't have to be. You see the fact that no one has, if it will be a chiyuv, then everyone has to do it. But it's not a chiyuv, it's only for a benefit. So therefore, it's not an absolute chiyuv, and therefore, on that you don't say asay dochol lo saseh. Okay, that's the end of the daf. Yashikach, everybody. Thank you.